I did a stream earlier today. It was only half an hour long, pretty short. And I did it early because normally early during the day, a lot of the viewers tend to be from overseas. So since it was a Friday and that's when I am off early, I wanted to see if I could talk with people overseas about what's going on in their part of the world, as an extension of my geopolitics discussion I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Um, I decided to prematurely end the geopolitics discussion just because it wasn't getting a lot of eyeballs. And well, often I don't get a lot of eyeballs. That's not the issue per se. The issue was I wasn't getting a lot of conversation about it. And then was made it worse is when I was having conversation on those geopolitical discussions, anytime I talked about a particular country over there in East Asia, it kept dinging my videos so that I had limited ad suitability. So that was it would have just been a sunk cost to continue doing those videos on geopolitics discussions if every time I have to bring up America's like most most number one rival right now, that it would get limited ad suitability because they are a huge potential revenue um, market for YouTube and other Google products and services. So obviously, they find it not very marketable to place ads and content that doesn't that may put that other country in a pejorative light. Uh, Danny says hello, what's up? Donald Trump says good day, what's going on? So what are you talking about today? So I'm about to get into it in 1 second, Danny. I was just letting people know that I was no longer doing my geopolitics discussions that I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, aside from the holidays, because I wasn't getting a lot of good conversation, and when I was having conversation, um, I wasn't getting ad revenue from it because if I talked about a certain country, YouTube doesn't like that. So I'm switching gears, but I'm actually going to be talking about something way more controversial than geopolitics discussions. Now, geopolitics may re-enter into these new conversations, but this is what I'm going to call correctly politically incorrect. Shout out to my man Moonlit Fern for giving me the name of that. Again, the title's called correctly politically incorrect, and each topic is going to be on something different. It's going to be something very controversial and up to the moment. What's up, Kat? um, Amber Overland says hi from women's prison. Well, if you're from women's prison, hope you're taking care of yourself. um, Make sure people are sending you that commissary, you know. Um, but if you're joking, yeah, that's I wouldn't joke about that. But if you're for real, hey, I know they do have internet capabilities in prison. Um, Paulins has spoken like a true politician, just yapping. I'm not being a true politician. What I'm doing is prefacing the material, bro. Let me cook. Let me cook, and you'll see where I'm leading. Some of you are so used to TikTok and Twitch, you have no attention spans. Like I'm pretty sure most of you can't sit through and just read a book, much less a magazine. Probably not even a magazine. Let me cook. This is called prefacing. So I'm saying that from the past 2 weeks, I did an umbrella conversation called Geopolitics each day on a different region of the world. I cut it short because it wasn't working out well. Like I said, I wasn't getting much conversation on the particular topics, and when I was getting traction on certain topics, YouTube didn't want to um, place ads in those in those streams because I talked about a particular country in East Asia in many of them. So I cut that short, and now we're doing a new one. This one is called correctly politically incorrect. So basically, I'm gonna take a position not on either. So there are two sides in a lot of these controversial views. I'm not going to take either side. Instead, I'm going to take a nuanced position between both, which is probably going to piss off everyone. And like I said, it's called correctly politically incorrect. Shout out to my man Moonlit Fern. Softball lover says, "Hey, what's up?" Um, Buck says, and Paul Bunyan, shut up, man. This guy's actually smart. Man, appreciate it. Thank you. Mullet Man 34 says, "Yo, man, can I get a shout out? Channel name is Mullet Man 34. There you go, guys. Go check out his channel." Unknown Runner says, "Why do you accept donations from IPAC?" What? Do I look like a congressman? I would, if I could get donations from IPAC, I would love that. I'm not a Congress member, so your statement literally doesn't make sense. If you're referring to the United States Congress, you will have to ask them, and you will have to ask whichever particular politician you're referring to. Asking me about something that's above my pay grade is not going to go well because I cannot answer for the behavior of other people. Man 34 said he's cooking. So the first one is going to be a spicy one. I was already asking my moderators, what should I do? Thoughts on Trump and Harris? Oh, I've done like several. If you want to dig into the crates, so to speak, I've done several videos on that. People know where I stand on that. That I, voted for Trump. I did, I did like a 5 hour live stream just cooking Kamala Harris. Um, we can get into that again, but since the election is over, I want to move past that. But we can touch back on that issue. Um, Waffle House Granny, which is what are your thoughts on witchcraft? I've actually talked about that. That was in a previous stream that I did, Waffle House, on the paranormal. Each day, I talked about a different topic on the paranormal. I didn't specifically touch on witchcraft, but I touched on things like psychics, astrology, ghosts, aliens, ESP, um, what else? I touched on the secret societies, stuff like that. So I didn't touch particularly on witchcraft, but I did. But it is under the my ages of paranormal. If you want looking like about 4 or 5 weeks back into my conversations, um, and it depends on what you mean by witchcraft. Are you talking about um, the practice of modern day witchcraft? Are you talking about ancient witchcraft, as it was alleged to be, a part of, demonology or whatever? I mean, it depends on what aspects of witchcraft you're referring to. But I'm gonna get back into the meat of this conversation, since people are gonna think I'm just spinning my wheels here. Mr. Handsome says, "Hi, what's going on?" Um, am I a correction officer? No. Why? No, just because I said no. Someone brought up the whole prison thing, Mr. Handsome, and then I said someone said they were messaging live stream from a female prison. So I said hello. Make sure you get in your commissary. I was joking. But anyway, BDIS89 says, "Y'all notice how are the drone talking and news is completely gone?" Depends on where you go. The way I don't know what news depends on what news you're referring to. I've been looking at stuff from, if you go to Fox News or The Hill, they still mention it, and they do mention the fact that it seems like people are trying to gloss over that. Um, and then the comedian, what's her name, Emily something, Whitney is it Whitney Cummings or something like that? She when she was on CNN for New Year's, she mentioned she mentioned that too in a joke. But anyway, um, Mullet Man says y'all saw floating orbs in the sky the other day. What do you think it is? Oh, that can be a number of things, bro. Let me get on my glasses so I don't have to strain while I'm looking at the chat room here. Mitch Snell says, Mullet Man, I have seen you in the past two streams I have watched. Wafa says the modern religion. Well, that's not the focus of this topic, so we can get into that one in another day if you can remind me. Cass says, please like, share, subscribe, or drop a super chat to Contrarian. Thank you. Brenda McCross says he's an ex-con. No, I mean, look, every black person probably knows of someone who's been to jail or prison. Sorry. Not to mention, I mean, there's like how many TV shows, like especially if you watch anything dealing with crime drama or ghetto stuff or urban novel type stuff, someone's locked up. Like, sorry, guys. Let's having a conversation. Um, Someone says I'm from Russia. Can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Jayla says hi. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. Crispy says hello, sir. What's up, Crispy? Moonlit says cat click bottom left and click all messages, not top messages. Moon Man says thank you for your time. No problem, man. So no, I cut the mic out only because I was talking to someone and that came up. That was intentional. So I wanted to keep that conversation private. So HD says, "What's up, Unc? How's the evening? All right." Nicker says, "Sub, thank you." Although the name that name is sus. Um, uh, I don't know. I don't know how to read that. Your the emojis for your username. But he says, "Sub, this brother's very knowledgeable, intelligent. Appreciate it." So anyway, so I'm gonna get into the crux of the conversation since we had a little um break right there for a second. Um, I pronounced the name correctly, bro. Chill. Anyway, um, so again, these topics for the next 2 weeks, maybe longer, depending on how well it goes, is called Correctly Politically Incorrect. And each topic is going to be on something very controversial. And there's usually a pro versus con or one side this versus the other side type of thing. But in true contrarian fashion, that is, excuse me, I'm gonna take a nuanced view this of that takes neither side. I don't know what HD is talking about Moonlit, so I'm not gonna repeat what he said. Um, so my moderators one of my moderators said I should just jump into the first one, just jump into the topic with a spicy one. So the first one is going to be on gender. This is what this is on, and it says so in the title too. Correctly politically incorrect. What is gender? So let's get into it. HD, that has nothing to do with my topic. So if you're going to talk about, if you want to talk about something relevant to the topic, put it in the super chat, bro. I'm not waste. You're not going to divert my topics from what I'm talking about with nonsense. Every week I'll do a live stream where I say ask me anything, and you missed that day, bro. So you gotta wait till the next time I do a ask me anything format, or you can drop it in the super chat. But if you're not dropping the super chat, you have to stay on topic. Like Moment Fern says, stay on topic, chat. So with saying politically incorrect or correctly politically incorrect, what is gender? And this is a spicy meatball. Like we've been talking about this recently in the news with all the stuff going on, and I mean, there recently has been like three people who have left this atheist group because they wanted to push some gender ideology over science. One of the one of the people there, Jerry Coyne. No, who was the first one to left? I think it was Jerry Coyne. Jerry Coyne is a very renowned evolutionary biologist, and he wrote an article for, I think it's called Freedom from Religion, something like that. I think that's the name of the group. Chris says hello. What's up? What's up, Chris Vine? And he was responding to a previous article where a person was trying to argue that a woman is anyone who feels a woman is anyone who feels they're a woman. And he basically said that's just biologically incorrect. Like a woman is by he was like a biological woman by definition is someone who has large gametes. So biological sex is very strictly defined within evolutionary biology. Lewis says, hi, dude. What's up? Giancarlo says, hello, man. Child from Italy. What's up? Cass says there are only two genders, and a rare occasion one is born a hermaphrodite. So we're going to get into it. She's jumping ahead. She's jumping the gun a little bit, but I want to slow cook this. Okay. Um, Chris Vaughn says, I have one question. What happened to black music? How did it go from BB King to today? You got to drop it in the super chat, my friend. That's not my topic today. My topic today is what is gender, and this is called my correctly politically incorrect discussions, and we're going to be having different discussions on political hot topics every live stream. So so as far as biological sex is concerned, because we're going to make distinctions, sometimes we're going to have to make distinctions within distinctions, which is the nature of philosophy, analytic philosophy at least. This is why not everyone's this is not why everyone has the cognitive ability to handle analytic philosophy, because a lot of people don't like doing nuance when it comes to very contentious topics, or they don't like to make those little logical incisions. So we're gonna do those here. We're gonna do a little bit of logic chopping, okay? Just a little bit, not like academic level type stuff. But yeah, so Jerry Coyne and people like Richard Dawkins, who was also in that Freedom from Religion group, and Steven Pinker, who is uh, a psychologist and psycholinguist, they've all left the group after Jerry Coyne was mistreated by the group. He wrote an article in response to, again, someone saying that a woman is whoever feels they are a woman. He said, no, no ma'am or no sir, whatever the person was, and said you know female and male in evolutionary biology or scientific biology writ large is strictly has been defined for over 100 years in biology by gamete size in humans as well as in many other animals, not all of them, but in many of the higher animals, biological sex is is strict and is fixed and it's binary. And we define biological sex by the gamete size. Large gametes female, small gametes male. So in humans, the large gametes, are the ova, right? lead to producing ova, whereas the small gametes in guys lead to producing spermatozoa, and we normally see it in the XY whatever. And so a lot of people in stuff like gender studies, queer studies, try to play word games with this sort of stuff because once they realize that the person in opposition to them is defining sex on a by by biology, they'll start playing games with, oh, well, it's not just the genes, it's also the hormones and the genitals, and oftentimes it's just whatever the doctor decided, like how they were identified by the doctor at birth, it assigned at birth or whatever. No, okay, no. Um, assigned at birth has become synonymous with biological sex, but they're not necessarily the same. Over 99% of the time, it is though. So they'll play this game and say, well, not every male and female are XX and XY. Some are XXY or XYY and stuff like that. And they here's another part of philosophy. Not only we do have to make distinctions within distinctions, sometimes we have to know when distinctions aren't genuine. This is one of those cases, right? So in science and in other academic realms, we don't define things by their exceptions. We define things by generalities. This is why we look for things that we can generate law-like generalizations of certain aspects of nature, like biological sex. And when we say it's strict and binary, it's fixed and binary. For most parts, it is, but there are some rare exceptions. Those are genetic mutations. Now, we don't need to watch X-Men to know that random mutations are rare, right? And these people who call themselves intersexed, um, and I'm gonna get to all these all you guys chats in a second. I just want to finish cooking this a little bit first, okay? So the people who are called intersex, um, or previously called hermaphrodites, and they were genuine hermaphrodites and pseudo hermaphrodites to refer to people who are intersex individuals. The difference between pseudo hermaphrodites and genuine hermaphrodites were people who were pseudo hermaphrodites had the external genitalia of both sexes, but usually they were non-functioning genitalia, whereas so-called true hermaphrodites, they had the internal genitalia that function along with the externally seen genitalia, which means they actually had working ovaries and working testes at the same time. But that's very rare. And these intersex people are a result of developmental sexual disorders. They are very rare, and just And the fact that we say biological sex is fixed and binary is for the same reason we say that um, you can only choose two, you can only make two choices when you flip a coin, heads or tails, because, yeah, just because you have developmental sexual disorders where a rare occurrence will happen where there's an intersex individual that doesn't neatly fall into either biological sex, there's a chance, a very slim statistical chance that when you flip a coin, it won't land on heads or tails. Instead will land on the edge of the coin. That is such a astronomically rare phenomenon that it would never make sense when people say flip a coin. Did they say heads, tails, or edge? Because the coin landing on its edge almost will never happen. Will virtually never happen, except in a very rare case. Very rare. Have any of you ever seen the flip the coin and had its fall on edge? If so, congratulations. You're one of the very rare people who've seen that, who've experienced that. But this is why biological sex is fixed and binary. Gender is more messy. Gender is something we're going to go into. First, I'm going to read these comments, and then I'm going to switch from biological sex to gender. Okay. But I want to reiterate, so biological sex has been defined in scientific biology for over 100 years by the size of the gametes. Okay. Large gametes equals female, small gametes equals male. And this happens in other primates and as well as some other animals as well. So there you go. Now I'm gonna get into the comments and I'm gonna go on to specify the differences between, or the alleged differences between biological sex and gender. Panero says Bismillah, God bless, thank you. Jacksonville Kid says science versus philosophy. Not necessarily. We at least us in an analytic philosophy tradition, science we see philosophy as continuous with science, particularly natural science. We don't make a sharp distinction between science and philosophy. The differences largely are bureaucratic between what's philosophy and what's science, and that tends to be more of the case because in the empirical sciences, um, investigation tends to be more um, empirical or ex- experiential, whereas in philosophy, um, studies tend to be more conceptual investigation. So, but largely in analytic philosophy, we see philosophy as continuous with science. We don't see it as antagonistic towards science at all. If anything, where philosophy runs afoul of science, we would usually consider that philosophy bad. So, okay says I eat sentient beings with conscious thoughts. Maybe. I don't know. Chris says, why is there even a question about gender? What the F happened to you, America? You are a Frank Sinatra nation. Don't forget that. Most people younger than 40 don't even know who Frank Sinatra is. So, yeah, that's not going to help there. Um, and it's good to question stuff. It's not to question stuff in itself isn't bad. What's bad is when people let ideology trump reason. That's bad. One says no Lewis Kunt, think logically. Kunst, sorry, Kunst, Larry Lewis Kunst. I don't want to say your name incorrectly, and then people try to make jokes. Um, Jacksonville Kid says one's thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are philosophical beliefs, which is philosophy and not factual evidence. You have no background in philosophy. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and you sound stupid. I'm glad that your the message was deleted by one of my moderators. Philosophy is an academic discipline, and most of you have no background in it. I have a whole fucking degree in it. It is a it is a serious academic discipline, and I'm pretty sure you would fail it. And I'm pretty sure you don't have any academic degree whatsoever beyond high school. Anyway, Matt says pineapple belongs on pizza. Yeah, that's just a travesty in itself. So we don't do that here. Moon says no one's debating that Lewis. He just quit picking on minorities and stop the hate. When did I pick on a minority? And see, these this is one of these little soy boys. Like literally, no one even said anything about trans people yet. We're going to get into that though. Believe me, we're going to get into that. But notice we didn't even say anything about anything dealing with people living a different lifestyle yet. Have chat room. Have I or any of my moderators made any mention of people living their alternative lifestyles as of yet? I haven't even got there. I just started cooking. The first thing I've been talking about was defining biological sex. If if literally if literally uh, sexual biology 101 is controversial to you, you need to go get your little trigger uh, trigger warnings and go pack it up and go somewhere else because literally define literally given the definition of biological sex was not controversial. We haven't gotten to the controversial parts yet. If you think that part was controversial, you're just a bitch and you need to go do 10 push-ups before you come back to this chat room. Mullen Fern says we talking biology, not identity. Kat says please stay on topic, guys. Is the topic of conversation correctly politically incorrect? What is gender? Mullen says it's not hate, it's a conversation. Yeah, I mean we literally haven't mentioned anything about different groups yet. We're going to get into that because I'm not straying away from it. Trust me. Jaden says you do not want to know how long it took me. What? Mm-mm-mm. Lewis uh, Kuntz says biology is biology, but an animal is nothing without its brain. You need to stay off drugs, sir. Because what? Batty says, what about someone with a chromosome defect? Where's the missing parts of a chromosome? Well, again, we just got into that. Random mutations are rare occurrences. You don't def, you don't make you don't define things scientifically by astronomically rare occurrences. That's not how things work. We don't define a car how a car works by random times when they blow up. Like no, like yes, they may randomly blow up for some rare on some rare occasion because of some defect. But that's not how we define how a car works, is it? No. Again, we don't define biological sex by developmental sexual disorders because they are so statistically rare that it would be asinine to do so. It's just like we don't define the flip of a coin head by heads, tail, or edges because even though it can land on the edge of the coin, that almost never happens. It's a statistically very rare occurrence. We don't define things that way. Biological sex is fixed and binary, just like flipping a coin is fixed and is binary. This should be the basic point on which we agree first before we get into all the controversial stuff. Biological sex is fixed and binary. There's male and female. That's it. Even in the case of developmental sexual disorders like Imani Khalif, who participated in the Olympics in last year, that person was still a genetic male because he was intersex. There was some confusion of whether Imani Khalif was male or female, but Imani Khalif was a genetic male with a developmental sexual disorder that made Imani intersexed. So again, if he or she, Imani Khalif, um, is a genetic male, then ergo Imani is a male because again in biological sex is defined by the size of the gametes. Large gametes equals female, small gametes equal male. QED, which stands for um, quad S demonstratum. It's just a very nerdy way of saying what was to be proved was shown. So anyway, we're moving on. Um, Moonless says, Batty, that's a good question, but not the topic. She says, my bad, no problem. Moonless says, hi, Jaden. Editor Girl says, hello again, it's been a while. Oh, hey, what's up? Moonless says, you good, Batty, understand we're addressing the conversation, no bias and no hate. Kako says, I always flip edge, I practice it. Um, yeah, you would have, that would be, if someone practiced flipping a coin to purposefully land on its edge, that would be more of a trick. That's not something that's a random flipping of a coin. I'm talking about a random flipping of a coin with people who did not train themselves to purposely make a coin land on its edge. That's not that if you purposely practice so to get a desired result, that's no longer a random coin flip, is it? You took the randomness out of it. Moon says hyenas are a prime example when it comes to gender. He says learn international Russian language. I'm in America. I have no reason to learn international Russian. The only time I was going to learn Russian wouldn't have been something you would have liked, though, brother. I was about to train to learn a Russian dialect, when I was going to be an interrogator in the army to interrogate Russians. So yeah, if I had learned Russian, it probably wouldn't have been very nice to some of your brethren. Just saying. Joe Ryan said 17 days till America is going to be great again. 17 days? Isn't it? I thought it was January 6th. Am I off here, guys? Isn't the inauguration January 6th? Anyway, moving on. We're not doing this Russian bullshit. You're on my channel, so speak English or bounce. Anyways, so Kat says, please like, share, subscribe, or drop a super chat to Contrarian. Peter says, hello, what's up, Peter? Melissa says, Russian language doesn't taste good, buddy. The Russian girls do, though. I'm just saying, swimming all up in the snow bunny. All up in the snow bunny. Oh, all up all up in a comrade. Worth every ruble. If you stop. Um, and we're gonna stop with that pizza pineapple stuff. That's just blasphemy. Uh, but Batty says, "Whoa, Captain." I'm not gonna repeat the whole username. That's funny. Hello from Scotland. How are you doing today? Am I right? He's I'm a little emotional. We don't do emotions over here, Captain. If you feeling emotional, bro, go. I don't know what time zone you are in Scotland currently. I would suggest doing some push-ups. We don't do emotional over here. Moonlit says love Scottish whiskey. Local thing says hello from the Philippines. Kamusta na local things. Oh, he says local thing says, oh, so she is chick with D. We have those in Philippines also. I don't know whom you're referring to. I'm not that. I'm a dude. But yeah, we know about the lady boys in the Philippines. We don't do that over here. A Ron says greetings from Palermo. Listen here, A Ron. That was play. What's up? Moon says like, share, and subscribe. Super chat is bottom right of your screen. Though if you have a specific question, Batty says I understand. I asked before you went into all of that. Local thing says we in the Philippines are so happy you elected Trump. Now there will be peace in the world. Thank you, my chocolate brother. God bless you. Appreciate it. We'll see what the old boy can do. I mean, there's a lot of optimism. Like the day after he was elected, the stock market went up. Hamas was saying they wanted to quit. We'll see. But I'm gonna get back to the topic, guys. Oh, Joe says January 20th. Okay. Why did Oh, I know why I'm thinking. I'm thinking of the. I'm thinking of the riots from back in 2021. Okay, I'm sorry. That's why I was thinking January 6th because of the riots and protests back in January 6th that everyone called an insurrection. Which no, that's not how insurrections even work. Like I wish people would define their words more carefully. That was not an insurrection. That wasn't even an erection. But whatever. Anyway. Betty says, LOL. Enter name says, what up? What's the live about, guys? Correctly, politically incorrect. What is gender? So we just defined biological sex. So now we're going to get into gender. This is the meat and bones. This is going to be the controversial part. But for people who got their their panties in a twist because we define biological sex, I'm sorry for you, but that's literally scientific biology. That sex is defined by the size of the gametes. Large gametes equals female, small gametes equals male. That's it. It's fixed and it's binary. And for all the rare occurrences of intersex individuals, intersex are people who used to be called hermaphrodites. That term is not really used anymore. They use intersex now. Those are results of developmental sexual disorders. So we don't define sex by rare disorders. So this is why it's fixed and binary. Like the random flipping of a coin is either heads or tails. It's not heads, tails, or edge. A coin may land on its edge, but such a statistically very rare occurrence that we would never make that a part of the choice of a random flipping of a coin, which is why we also don't declare a developmental sexual disorder as part of the way sex can be defined either. So we're getting into gender. What is gender? What's the difference between that and biological sex? Uh, Melissa says the Philippines are going through rough times as most South Asia, but we're survivors. Philippines is doing a bit better than they were, I would say, 12 years ago, though. Joanne McKenzie says, I hate my life. Well, sorry for you. You're going to have to put that somewhere else, but we're not doing that here. I'm I'm not your therapist. Intername says sex is only two, gender is a spectrum. I don't know why they try to confuse youth about it. Okay. And it's never a separate issue, it's always combined. So here's the thing. So now we're going to get into it. So I don't believe gender is a spectrum, but I also don't believe it's synonymous with biological sex. The problem is sometimes it is used as synonymous with biological sex, even though it's not, but it's close enough that it can be used that way. Nancy says you too be old to be on live. Well, your mother's too old to be sucking dick, but she's still doing it though, ain't she? We didn't tell her to stop. She's good at her job, so let her keep doing it. Same thing with Mr. SM. He learned from the best, his mother, and the father taught her. Oh yeah, so guys, in case you don't see the gray hair, I'm Gen X, so I we grew up in a time where we would roast the shit out of you. So all these little younger folks, I'm gonna be nice today. All these little younger folks coming in with the shits and giggles, they fuck with the best when they mess with Gen X. We literally would just crack on each other or whatever you, or like you guys would say, roast people, cook people. We did this all day long in school. Literally, we had contests roasting each other. So for little young people to come in here and try to crack slick, dude, like we did this better than anyone. There's actually books written about us cracking jokes on each other back in our youth. Don't try it with me. You're gonna lose. Felix says hi. What's up, Felix? Uh, Patty says, "Dang, out here roasting people." Oak things says Chocolate Brothers correct about insurrection. We also have guns. The Philippines cannot coup government without guns. I actually wanted to give a talk about the Philippines local things, but I didn't just because I had to stop my geopolitical discussions. But we'll get back into that another day. Just come back to the live if you can, and we'll talk about that. J Station 2 says, Bum bless up, I'm the general. I'm sorry, that's such a hard that was such a bad accent of mine. I'm sorry. I cannot affect a good patois. But in any case, Wagwan. Into name says dog already gets it. Mula says y'all confusing with what you choose to identify as instead of having a conversation. Omar says, what is Gen X? Omar, Gen X are the people born from 1965 to 1980. We are often now called the forgotten generation because most people forget we exist. Most people either confuse us with millennials, the older ones, or baby boomers. Here's the thing: we hated baby boomers before all of you did, because they used to everything they talked about, everything, all the shit they gave millennials, all the shit they gave Gen and Z, they gave to us first. And literally they just repurposed the same insults they gave to Gen X to millennials and then to Gen Z. That's why we roll our eyes when we hear baby boomers complain about millennials and now complain about Gen Z, because they literally said the same thing about us back in the 80s and 90s. Okay. Uh, the people of there are a lot of things that define the Generation X. For one, Star Wars. People of my particular generation from 1977 to 1983 are called the Star Wars generation or Zennials. We They call us the Star Wars generation because we were born between the three movies of the original trilogy. So we're defined by things like Star Wars, um, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Clueless, uh, uh, hip hop. Hip hop was born out of Gen X in 1973 in the South Bronx by DJ Cool Herc, African Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash, um, grunge grunge rock out of Seattle, Washington was born out of Gen X, right? Um, the cartoons of the 80s, the Transformers, G.I. Joe, Voltron, all that stuff that's been repurposed now by Gen Z and millennials, us. um, this is Gen X. We were considered forgotten. Um, we were the last generation before there was internet. So we kind of grew up in a generation half. It was like half before internet and half after internet. Um, we we didn't have the greatest parents growing up, so we made do. And there's literally a bunch of documents about us. You can find them on National Geographic and everything else, but we're kind of forgotten about. The ironic thing is we kind of like being forgotten about. So back to the topic. Melissa says neither I need to have the last word. BS. Yep. Clutis Herrera says greetings from Japan. Ohio. Clutis. Internet says I'm white as snow, but I'm native as F. It's wild. I get racism from both ends. Oh, I mean, Moonlit is native, so he says internet says I don't know why people are like that. Trolling. That's all. What? I don't know who Harv is. Harv says you speak crap, then ban people. You are a weasel, my friend. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. Actually, we can't ban people. We can just hide their usernames. But since you're being a bitch, let me go ahead and help you out there. There, now you're gone. uh, Batty says millennials got that middle child syndrome. So the funny thing with millennials tended to be like the younger half siblings of Generation X. Like basically, they were the younger siblings of Generation X when our parents got their shit together. So when our parents were just being reckless and fucking at 18 and like around 18, 20 years old, they produced us. Then like 5, 10 years later, when they got their shit together and got married, they produced our younger half siblings. Those are the millennials. Name says I will 100% have this guy over every hangout. And thank you, I appreciate that, bro. He's saying get together. He said, bro would blow some minds. LL. He's left my ass off. Some of the guys like to smoke. This dude would totally send them. And Moonlit says we were the outcasts. And the names is no lies told. Jesus Image Church Africa says greetings from Uganda, Africa, bro. What's up? What's up? Jesus Image. Rashmi says hello. Who are you? Just a contrarian. Rashmi's Melissa's who are you? I'm sorry, Rashimi. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Is it Rashimi? Because I think it's Rashmi, right? She says I'm an Indian girl. Oh, speaking of Indian girls, guys, I want to let you know. So I have befriended an Indian acid attack survivor, and I am contemplating putting her on the live stream. But I'm gonna need people to be very nice because I will not take any disrespect to how her appearance looks. She's an acid attack survivor, but I want to bring her on because she is an influencer on Instagram and I think TikTok. So I might be bringing her on. I'm not going to give her name out right now because I haven't had her approval whether she wants to come on or not. If she does, be forewarned, I will ban every single person who mentions something about her. She's a Indian acid attack survivor. She lives in Mumbai. Thinking about doing that. So anyway, back to the subject. So we define biological sex. Biological sex is fixed and binary and is determined by the size of the gametes. Large gametes equals female. Small gametes equals male. Gender is not synonymous with biological sex. But is gender only two things or is it along a spectrum? We're going to define different aspects of gender. Okay, so the problem is people sometimes use gender and synonymously with biological sex. And then at other times they want to use it and say, oh, it's just a social construct. That's fine. The problem is the people who want to play games with the term gender, people who tend to do things, major in things like queer studies and who are trans activists, they want to eat their cake and have it too. And yes, that is the proper way to say that idiom. Most people say it backwards. Most people say have your cake and eat it too. That's actually the wrong way to say it. The correct way is eat your cake and have it too. That's actually the right way to say that idiom, guys. I know a lot of you not gonna believe me. Trust me, I'm a nerd. so, uh, so anyway, as far as gender is concerned, so gender, I'm gonna say this, And this is partly my opinion and partly based on how I see gender, the concept of gender being used. So we had this distinction in linguistics, right, between statements, sentences, utterances, and propositions. Okay. So a proposition is sometimes defined as the meaning or the or semantic content of a sentence. Okay. They are in they are something internal, right? Sentences are external, but a statement is a particular use of a sentence. Utterance can be a sentence or statement, but not necessarily. Not every utterance is grammatical. Like, that's not a that's not a sentence. It's not a definitely not a even if you can say it's a sentence, it's not a declarative sentence. Like, there's no truth value behind it, right? To say, that's but so we make a distinction between utterances, statements, sentences, and propositions. Like I said, so a proposition is usually a bunch of concepts connected together in a logical syntactic format, right? And it makes up the semantic content or meaning of a sentence or or a thought. Now, those a particular use of a sentence is a statement, like like a verbal usage of a sentence is a statement, and then that's different from an utterance. An utterance can be excuse me, an utterance can be a statement, but doesn't always have to be. It's just any sort of like verbal noise is an utterance. So why did I say all that? I may have lost people. That's because I want to get into all the distinctions with gender, between gender norms, gender identity, and sexual orientation, okay, and biological sex. So we already defined biological sex. So sex is biological, or what we say assigned at birth. That's biological sex, right? Because almost all the times, whatever the so-called gender is assigned at birth is actually the person's biological sex. 99% of the time, or about 99% of the time, except when someone has some genitalia abnormalities. Again, we don't define people by rare occurrences. We define them by generalities. Okay. So gender can be cleaving into all these little different issues that these different things we thought of. I mean, I brought up when I mentioned the differences between sentences, statements, utterances, and propositions. Um, and we can think of it sort of a difference between emotions versus feelings. So some people may not know the difference between emotions and feelings. So feelings is the internal state, right? But emotions is the expression of those feelings. I would say gender works sort of similar to that. So biological sex is the internal thing, right? Gender is the cultural expression of biological sex. Hence, it's two things. However, because it is culturally constructed, it's not binary, it's binomal. What's the difference between binary and binomal? Binary is something that can be cleaving right just like that, evenly, either this or that. That's binary. Binomal, gender being binomal is still two things, but you can be more of one thing than the other, right? So even though gender is still two things, it's binomal, not binary. we should say. Okay. And it seems to be like a reflection or cultural expression of biological sex as what would be typified in someone's society. Now, some societies, they will say that there's more than two genders. They might, like in some Native American groups, there are third gender groups or two spirit group. People call it two spirits. I get that. Again, that's a cultural thing, right? But when we're talking about gender, we're almost always like referring to biological sex in some sense. So it tends to still be just a cultural expression of biological sex. Now, g- gender norms are gender norms tend to be more fluid, right? Even Freud talked about this a long time ago. He believed there was um, nothing psycho there was nothing pathological about men being more feminine or women being more masculine. Gender he thought gender norms were fluid. He never got into things like transgenderism or stuff like that in his day and time, but he did get into things about homosexuality, bisexuality, and gender norms. And gender identity being either, masculinity or femininity. So either way, it seems like it's still two things, right? We don't talk about masculinity, femininity, and then some other identity, do we? We just talk about those two things and how there's sort of a continuum between them, meaning there's two things, two genders. It's just they aren't binary; they flow into each other. So that's gender. Again, gender norms is how, again, people see themselves. And here's the thing about gender identity. Gender, the evidence has come in has shown that gender identity is somewhat biological, just like we know that sexual orientation is mostly biological. This was something we found out like, about 25 years ago when we start seeing sexual dimorphic regions of the brain. To say sexual dimorphic is just a fancy word of saying that different parts of the brain are structured differently depending on a person's biological sex. So men, and I think this is in the Raphi nuclei of the brain and some other sexual dimorphic regions of the brain, they're actually structured differently in men and women. And then we see that in homosexual men, that those same regions tend to be more uh, structured like the woman's brain in those regions than a uh, heterosexual man's brain. So starting at least 26 years ago, we started realizing that sexual orientation was partly biological, which was something that the people in that community had been saying for a long time that they were born that way. So they were right. Gender identity is something else we're starting to get hard evidence on right now as well. Someone sent me a super chat. I want to make sure I give them props for that. Thank you, whoever sent me the. It says message deleted. I'm sorry. Whoever sent me the super chat, I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I can't acknowledge who that was. Rashmi Yadas is no English. Please, Hindi. I don't speak Hindi. I'm in the United States. Sorry, I need to get some water. Drink water. um, I'm gonna get back to the comments in a second. I know I missed a lot, but I needed to get into the conversation. Or I never would if I just read the comments all day. Um, so Again, so to get back to what I was stating, so gender seems to be the cultural expression or reflection of biological sex. Since biological sex itself is fixed and binary, gender is what two things as well. However, because it's a cultural expression, it's not so evenly cleaved in half as biological sex is. Seems that there's still just two genders, but they seem to be binomial instead of binary. Again, binomial meaning uh, that you can be that you're either one or the other, but you can be more of one than the other. So you can be a male. So with gender, you might be a male, but there may be more feminine aspects, or you can be a female, but there might be more masculine aspects. And then it takes us into gender norms. Gender norms are cultural, right? So uh, I don't think anyone begrudge someone that who's the way they express their gender is not typical of their biological sex or of their gender, right? And then again, then we get into gender identity. Gender identity seems partly biological, which means some men just are more feminine than others, and some women are just more masculine than others. Just like with sexual orientation, some people are just going to be um, having having affinity for the same sex or both sexes, but that's partly biological. Here's another thing to wrap your head around. So we know from behavioral genetics, there's a one basic truth of behavioral genetics, which is that all human traits are partly hereditary. What does that mean? All human traits are partly hereditary. That means all behavior is partly biological, guys. Okay. So let me get back into the comments and I'm going to keep cooking with this conversation. Jesus Image says, "Welcome to our church foundation, caring for orphans and homeless people in Uganda." That's what's up. That's what's up. Rashmi says, "Love you, appreciate it, but I am a married man, and also I don't just respond to people online because I don't. Even if I were a single man, I'm not easily getting catfished." Rex FN says, "Yo, I haven't seen you in a while. I know you don't remember me." Jay says, "Where are you from?" "I'm from the United States." Rashmi says, "No boyfriend." Well, I'm sorry for that. I'm pretty sure a pretty Indian woman can get a boyfriend without a problem. Again, no diss, but I know a lot of people from the subcontinent like the catfish, and sorry, I just don't fall for that stuff. Melissa's big love chat, show it back with like and sub and super chat. Thank you. Batty says almost 1 a.m. for me. I'm going to go to bed. You earned a subscribe, my friend. Thank you, Batty. It's the same time here, by the way. I'm getting off too pretty soon. Omar Zaman says asset attacks are horrible. Yes, they are. It's a very horrendous thing done by incels. Um, Jesus Image says I would like to collaborate with you in my church foundation, bro. I'm not a religious guy, my friend, so I appreciate it. My size, no pause, Rajmi. We not doing that here because I'm pretty sure you're a dude. Girls don't ask that. Girls don't ask that. Gay guys do. No girl's gonna ask some no no feminine woman, especially from India, very traditional culture, is gonna ask a man their size. Only little incel Indian men do shit like that. You're a dude. You are a dude. Again, I'm not stupid. Sometimes I pretend not to know things, but I'm just gonna put my cards on the table and say you're a dude, Rashmi. You're not a girl. An Indian girl is not coming online and being a pervert. That's not, no. They wouldn't put themselves out there like that. You're a dude. Bada Boom says you still being an idiot. Well, too bad you already unhit him. He said you still being an idiot. I mean, you still sucking dicks, but hey, no one's kicking dicks out of your mouth at work, so let me do my job. Danielle says most education is a waste of money. I think that's patently false. And the name says Bros Morgan Freeman 2.0. Danielle says, how many genders are there? Moonlit says two. Moonlit for the win. Danielle says, what's up with this dude, Justin? Oh, we already hit him. Good. Moonlit says, be respectful and back your statements. It'll be addressed and countered in a healthy conversation. If you want to troll in 2025, you lame. Doctor says, you look nice today. Um, I don't take compliments from dudes. That's sus. Tate says, hi. Moonlit says, like, share, and subscribe. And super chat is not hate. It's just a topic people are sensitive of. Just a healthy conversation. No hate. Moonlit, for instance, behavior traits are very hereditary. Yes, indeed. Um, Sorry, I'm going through all the trolley comments. Um, Moonlit says Gremlin scared tonight. Mods is around. Um, Whoever's saying oil up, um, why don't you do that with your daddy? Ain't that what he good at? Anyway, so back to what I was saying. So we made the distinction. So biological sex, sexual orientation, gender, gender norm, gender identity. So like I said, gender identity is partly biological, as is sexual orientation. We can even see the differences in people's sexual orientation by looking at sexually dimorphic regions of the brain. And now we have supporting evidence coming in along the same lines for gender identity. And I pointed to a fact of behavioral genetics, which is that all human traits are partly hereditary. That means not just physical traits, but also behavioral traits as well. I said that gender norms, whether being masculine or feminine, um, will be expressed differently by some folks. And that gender, there's two genders, and that's largely because gender is a reflection or cultural expression of biological sex. As biological sex is fixed and binary, gender is two things, but it's not as fixed. It's binomial, which means even though with gender you may be male or female, you might be some people may be some males may be more feminine and some females may be more masculine, but still there's still two genders, which is again not exactly synonymous with biological sex for the same reason that emotions and feelings aren't the same thing. Feelings are our internal states. Emotions are expressions of those internal states. Um, and then, like I said, gender norm. Excuse me, gender norms. Let me drink some water, guys. Sorry. Um, Gender norms are fluid because as Freud pointed out a long time ago himself, some men are going to be more feminine than others, some women are going to be more masculine than others. So I think people try to use gender and gender norms interchangeably, but they're not necessarily the same thing. Um, and it gets into how I made a distinction in linguistics between propositions, sentences, statements, and utterances. Now, I said that a proposition is the meaning or semantic content of a sentence, and they're basically usually propositions are these concepts that are have a logical syntactic form to them. Okay, um, and because sentences contain a proposition, that gives them their truth value, either true or false. A sentence, a declarative sentence, or I should say any assertion whatsoever, not just a sentence, but any assertion is either true or false. Like biological sex can either be male or female, and that's because the truth value of the proposition. Now, the particular use of that sentence is called a statement, and an utterance is when you verbally assert, you verbally avow a statement or any sort of other sort of verbal outburst. Doesn't necessarily have to be something grammatical. If I say that's that's a utterance, but it's not anything grammatical. It doesn't have any truth value. But if I say colorless ideas sleep furiously, colorless is a favorite pet sentence of Noam Chomsky. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. That is a syntactically grammatical sentence, but semantically it's just nonsense. um, so getting back to my those different linguistic distinctions between these distinctions of gender and sex, I'm trying to make the trying to make that connection. So biological sex is fixed and binary, right? Due to gamete sizes. Large gametes equal produces a female, small gametes produce a male. And likewise, when I say the meaning of a proposition is the meaning or semantic contents of a sentence that gives it its truth value. And the truth value can either be true or false for any sentence or assertion. And the particular use of that sentence is a statement, and the verbal avowal of that statement is a utterance. But those utterances can may not just be statements; they can be any sort of verbal outburst. So, getting back to sex and gender, biological sex, fixed binary, male, female. Gender, not fixed, but still two things, but it's binomial, meaning it's either still male or female, but one can be a little bit less male or a little bit more male. One can be a little bit more female or a little bit less female, but it's still just male or female. Gender norms, masculine and feminine. some people, some males may be more feminine. Some females may be more masculine. Gender identity, whether you identify as being male or whether you identify as being female. Those are partly biological, at least so far from the evidence. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm gonna read the comments, then we're gonna jump we're gonna jump into something even more spicy, which is the different the different people of the alphabet crew. I need to drink some water though. Da, 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 da. Oh, so buenas vistas is gender is an expression biology. That's a good way of wording that. Thank you. That makes us true words, brother. Bronco says, "Are you married?" Yes, I am. That says the truth is people turn away from God and are lost, and the enemy using them for His purpose. So I understand that. My issue is because religion is so divisive. Even with a particular religion, there may be different denominations within that religion. So we can't use religion to define. We can't use religion to define gender or sex or whatever because everyone has different views on religion. So something that polarizing um, won't can't be used to for that purposes. So I think this is where we go back to the biology and we first distinguish, okay, what does scientific biology tell us about sex? Then from there we can go into the social sciences and see what do we know about gender. And so we talk about social constructs. Now, the problem with people talking about social constructs is again, people want to eat their cake and have it too. And yes, that is the proper way to pronounce that idiom: eat your cake and have it too. Not the other way around, but it doesn't matter. Any case, the problem again, the point is when people try to say gender is a social construct, they want to have it both ways. They want to say, they basically want to say that it's real, but that it's relative at the same time. And you can't have it both ways. Um, if if you know if you want it to be real but also relative, it's going to take a bunch of special pleading to do that. A social construct, insofar as it having any sort of objectivity, it has to be at least psychologically real. When we say psychologically real, um, what are we saying? When we say something is psychologically real, we're saying that this is some sort of um, mental phenomena that can actually cause behavior. So most people in scientific psychology believe are realists about are mental realists. We believe that mental phenomena are real. If mental phenomena are real, they can't be relative. So again, it takes a bit of special pleading that these people in queer studies and gender studies want to do to try to call something a social construct. They want you to believe something is real, but that it's also relative, and that's kind of no, it doesn't work. If it's relative, if something is relative, then there's nothing to argue about. A good red flag, guys, for you to any conversation is if something here's the thing, if something is just subjective, then there's no argument about it. Then people sometimes do want to argue about things that are completely subjective, and if at the end at that point, if you realize that we're engaging in a debate about something that's completely subjective, then there's nothing to take seriously about this. It's like getting into a debate on what the best flavor of ice cream is. We all have our own subjective personal taste. Some might say cookies and cream, like I would. Some might say rum raisin. Some might say rocky road. Some might say uh, uh, cook, chocolate chip cookie dough. Personal taste is subjective, right? So there's no argument over it. So if we're admitting that something is subjective, then there's nothing to argue over. But but if we're arguing over the objectivity of something, then it's not relative. Okay. So like I said, they try to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say that gender is just a social construct, but they're using the term social construct wrong. Social construct doesn't mean that something is relative. That's the first thing. So they're using the concept of social construct wrongly in the first place because social construct doesn't necessarily mean that something is relative. And two, if it is relative, then how can you, if something is relative, then why do you need gender affirming treatments, gender reaffirming treatments? Is oh, it's relative, right? It's just a social construct, right? Since when do you have to cleave off someone's balls for a social construct? When do you get hormone treatment for a social construct? And some of them will try to will make an ad hoc excuse here and say, well, that's only because if they try to, because they still present as male, and so people will still treat them as a male even though they identify as a woman. They are being treated as such because that's what they are. Now, being in a polite society, we should treat people how they want to be treated within reason. But that doesn't mean that we have to forego reason here. And just because someone wants to be treated as a woman who is a biological male, we out of out of courtesy we should do such. But that doesn't mean we should also believe that they are actually a woman. Um, if I go to Comic Con and I see someone cosplaying as Superman, I'm going to address them as Superman, but that doesn't mean that I actually believe that that person is Superman because they're cosplaying as Superman. I'm doing it out of courtesy and because we're role playing here. uh, Moonlit says it's like saying I identify with a Snorlax. I'm not no Snorlax. Moonlit says explain that demic. Um, Moonlit says what the F are you saying, Buenas? I know I didn't catch what I didn't catch what he was uh, saying. Demic says it's not eyes that are blind, it's their hearts. Nah, I don't think so. I get what you're saying, but Sicilian Jiu Jitsu says, oh yeah, what about papaya? I have no idea what you're talking about, bro. Yeah, it's just how to handle a woman a little manly. I wouldn't handle them at all because I wouldn't want a manly woman. But I mean, you do you. When it says I was talking about why there are more feminine men today than 50 years ago. Well, as far as there being more feminine men today, is because people of today's generation are of lower testosterone than previous generations. That is a fact. What is to be explained is why. Is it a matter of evolution? Is it a matter of our diets? Are our diets leading to men having less testosterone? Is it a matter of socialization? Are men being groomed to be less masculine? Is it a combination of these things? Is it something we haven't even thought of yet? Like, like pollutants in our environment? We I don't know, but the fact of the matter is, yes, men today are more feminine than previous generations. That's because they are have lower levels of testosterone. I think a nice war will would correct that situation. Moonless says strange questions. Terrence says peace from Detroit. What's up, T Money? Paul says make Kamala Indian again. She never stopped being, bro. Just because you went to Howard does not make you black. I know of there. I've seen white and Indian and Asian people going to Howard. I didn't go to Howard. I almost did because my father was a professor there, but he didn't have tenureship. So, um, being an adjunct professor, he didn't have tenure, so he was already gone by the time I graduated. and had the nerve to hold that against me by saying I should have graduated a year earlier from high school. So he wanted me to skip my fourth year, fourth year of high school. No, I don't think so. Um, mm, mm, mm. Bueno says it should be objective that we are supposed to be heterosexual, whether you believe in God or not. That is how nature is supposed to work. Well, that's not necessarily true. Um, Again, um, sexual orientation is biological, and there are some people, for biological reasons, who are homosexual or bisexual because we see it mapped across the brain that there are sexually dimorphic regions. One of them being the Rafferty nucleus. Um, and also, we've seen homosexuality in animals. So it's not just this is not a particular aberration of humans. All of us, any of us who've owned or been around dogs know that we've seen male dogs hump other male dogs. People who went to zoos have sometimes seen male monkeys humping male monkeys. Um, this used to be even talked about in old ethological studies. Ethology is the study of animal behavior, right? Uh, One of the particular specialties within when I was an undergrad doing biopsychology, we did neuroethology, uh, which is like the study of animal behavior and underlying neuroscience. Um, but yeah, anyway, getting back to that. So in old ethology studies, um, they used to talk about homosexual behavior in animals, but it used to be they used to word it very carefully because this is in Victorian, we're talking about in Victorian times and in a time where, you know, you had to be more careful of how you express certain things. So the way they would talk about homosexual behavior in animals is they used to say stuff like, we see that the wolf expresses dominance over the other male wolf, expressed his dominance. How do you think he expressed his dominance? He gave him the Tyrone treatment. That's what happened. Wolf A, Wolf Alpha. This is another thing when they used to talk about alpha and beta males in the animal world. This is what they were usually. This is sometimes what they were euphemistically talking about. They were talking about homosexual behavior in a euphemistic way. In these old ethology studies, they would say the alpha wolf expressed his dominance over the beta wolf, meaning he slid the other wolf the pipe. So heterosexuality versus homosexuality. Homosexuality is not an aberration. It's been a part of nature, of animal nature before humans, and will continue to be one after humans. And coming from the psychological aspects of it, we've known since Freud that, I mean, there's nothing that's um, there's no psychopathology. There's not necessarily any psychopathology towards someone being homosexual. But when we talk about transgenderism, this is where things get a little bit murky. So I'm gonna read the comments, and then this is where I'm probably gonna piss some people off. Demek says, "Vistas, you right." He said about God, just my opinion. Jesus Genius is confusion and deception. Mola says shouldn't be any confusion. Cass says, why acknowledge irrational beliefs in the individual's incorrect gender identification? It shouldn't be pandered to other than in a therapy session. So no, we didn't even get into that yet, Kat. I was saying that so gender norms is something that is um merely a cultural construct, because gender norms, when you talk about norms, is normed by society, right? So the way masculinity or femininity is expressed within a culture is going to be is it is going to be that is going to be culturally relative. Gender norms are not gender and not gender identity. So that's why I wanted. That's why I was so careful to make distinctions between biological sex, sexual sexual orientation, gender, gender norm, and gender identity, because they aren't all the same things, even though these are all family related terms. Just like I tried to make that analogy towards linguistics when we talk about the differences between propositions, sentences, statements, and utterances. I can get into even more distinctions as well, but I don't want to get into all those linguistic distinctions. It will take me too far ahead of the discussion when I wanted to talk about particularly just gender. But gender identity is partly biological, just like we know sexual orientation or preferences. Gender is a seems to be the cultural expression or reflection of biological sex, which is only two things, right? And gender norms are um, what's considered typical of masculine or feminine behavior relative to relative to your culture. Okay, gender identity is whether you identify as um, masculine or feminine, and that's partly biological. Like I said, there's just some males who are going to be more feminine than others. There's just going to be some women who are going to be more masculine than others. That's partly biological. So we haven't gotten to what is a man and what is a woman, right? So man, woman, gender, right? So one of the favorite pet sentences in philosophy when we talk about doing a traditional like conceptual analysis, it's like something like bachelor. What is a bachelor? Bachelor is a unmarried adult male. So we can do the same thing with man, woman. What is a man? An adult human male. What is a woman? An adult human female. Boom, done. Class over. But we're gonna. But then what about the transgenderism and all these alphabet things? The LGTBQ, Q2SI, um, and the rest of those letters. So let me read the comments, then we're gonna jump into transgender. One says, Jesus Jr., be careful, I don't play. Jesus Jr. says, I don't understand, I'm not being funny. One says, I'm not arguing. Be careful. Hey, respect my mods, Jesus. Moonlit already knows what I tolerate don't and what I don't tolerate. So does Cat, and so do my other ears, and so do my other mods when they're here too. Miss Needle, Mrs. Contrarian. Um, Respect them because they they have my full blessings to help with the chat room. Uh, Moon says, then cheers, salute mi familia, and stay on topic, please. Double just earned him a band. Brighton says, "Are you a Mac?" I mean, sorry. That's Brighton Mac. I'm sorry. He said, "Are you a doctor?" No, I'm just a nerd with a few degrees, and I read a lot. Brighton Mac says, "What?" Jesus Junior says, "We are not monkeys." No one, literally, no one in this chat room said that anyone here was a monkey. Um, if you failed high school biology, just say you failed high school biology. But high school biology does not say that we evolved from monkeys. What biology teaches us is that humans, apes, monkeys, lemurs all share a common ancestor from the past. Never said we are monkeys. That is something that I haven't heard someone say in a long since like the 90s. And it's typically of people who've just it's like, bro, say you fail biology without saying you fail biology, because literally no one says in biology that we evolved from monkeys. We all have a common ancestor from which we descended. No one said we're monkeys. Moonlit says, "Listen, Double, every race has been slaves, depends on the time or era." I already, yeah, I think he already um, kicked them out the chat, Moonlit. Buena says, "A male dog will jump a human too. Doesn't mean they would rather hump a female dog if there wasn't one available." Haha. Oh, again, like my point is that homosexual behavior is not it's not sui generis to pervert humans. Okay, it runs throughout the animal kingdom. Okay, and like I said, it has been talked about in ethological studies for the past 100 or so years. It's just that they used to talk about it in a euphemistic way because it's a sensitive topic, particularly when you're talking about in earlier, more conservative times. A scientist would have to be very careful in how he communicated such behavior. So he might say it in a euphemistic way the alpha uh, that the alpha male expressed his dominance over the beta male, which was a euphemistic way of saying that one male dog humped the other male dog. And we see this in other primates. There's a lot of uh, homosexual and bisexual behavior in primates. We see it in the lower mammals as well. Not sure about reptilian animals, but I'm probably sure there are some cases of that as well. I only know of. I'm just gonna stick to mammals because that that pretty much shows that it's not unique to humans. Jesus says, "I believe we get dumber each generation. We assume we're intelligent because of technology, info, etc., but we forget fundamentals or common sense, rather lazy." Well, no. So, unfortunately, it's happening now. Um, and that's because of something called the reverse Flynn effect. The, the reverse Flynn effect is basically saying that the younger generations are performing more poorly on IQ tests than previous generations, because in the past, for the past almost 100 years of them of um, psychometricians um, administering standardized testing to students, um, usually each generation they had to renormalize the IQ test because each newer generation did better on the IQ test than the previous generation up until about the late 90s, early 2000s. This was predicted in the book called The Bell Curve, which was a very controversial book back in the 90s. because of its racial implications. I'm going to get into a whole different topic on that, guys. I might do that tomorrow. Race versus intelligence. But follow me here. Let's get back to the topic. So the when when the scientists um, recorded the fact that each generation was doing better on the IQ test, which was called the Flynn effect after his name James Flynn. He's still alive, by the way. He I think he's done some TEDx talks. So people thought, well, does that just mean every generation is getting smarter than the previous generation? No, not really. I mean, because if we go back to 2,200 years, we have people like Plato, who's probably still more brilliant than most people today. Um, what the Flynn effect was showing that uh, each that as education has emphasized more um, abstract reasoning, and as society has put more demands on society, of individuals in society rather, to have abstract reasoning abilities for, in their occupations, that people started applying these skills more, these skills of abstract and analytical reasoning. So each generation tended to do better at it as it was more emphasized in schooling, um, and more demanded of in our careers. Why it started reversing, we don't know exactly yet. It may be a combination of things. Again, just like with the lower testosterone in newer generations, just like current generations are lower in testosterone and lower in testosterone, they're also lower in average IQ than previous generations. That may be due to our public education failing us. So people are better, doing worse at abstract reasoning. We can see this in college. The average college IQ has gone down. When I came into college, the average IQ of a college graduate was 120. Now I believe it's like what, 110, 113, something like that. That is a big difference. That is that is a whole that is over a centile lower than previous generations. Okay. Um, what is that all to say? Get to feedback into the original conversation, because I don't want to go too astray. Um, but it, it goes to say we can't look at these little magic bullets, these single, look at some little oversimplified explanation, say, oh, it's just that today's generations are lazy or blah 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 blah. No, no. Um, behave issues in behavioral science tend to be very tend to be multifaceted problems. There's no also multifactorial, has a multifactorial causation. There's no simple thing that's causing uh, a big social causing a widespread social issue like that. It's usually a combination of things happening in concert with each other. And the what was predicted in the bell curve back in 1994 by Herrnstein and Murray is that as we saw the lowering of the average IQ of Americans, at the time they didn't call it the reverse Flynn effect because they were just predicting this was happening, looking at the data, and they were right. But they said, as the average IQ of America lowers, we're going to see more social problems, which we are currently seeing in higher education, in these culture wars that we are going through. This whole this whole thing of politics becoming like this never-ending animus. Like these things were predicted by them as a as sort of a byproduct of a society where the average IQ goes down, idiocracy. One thing is like now we're having these discussions over like gender. Buenos Vista says my money is on classical liberal, now considered far right. You've been on my channel before, Buenos, because you have to know that I've said that I'm a classical liberal. To answer this guy who kept saying Democrat or Republican, that has nothing to do with my topic here, bro. If you think that either I should be accepted or that I should be dismissed based purely on what political ideology I carry, then you're this is not the right channel for you. You need to go to somewhere that's more stupid. We think over here. Um, Fact of the matter is, I'm neither Democrat or Republican. I'm an independent, and I can. And as far as how I identify myself as a classical liberal. People in the like John Locke, John Stuart Mill, David Hume, those folks of the past. And but classical liberal isn't considered. They're on the right, but they're not considered far right. Not yet. Classical liberal is sort of like classical liberal might be considered a moderate conservative by today's standards, anyway. But they're not far right. Far right is like MAGA, the alt right, um, the neocons. That's far right. Do you believe a soul have gender? I don't even understand. Based on this whole conversation, I don't know how. I don't know where you get that question from. That doesn't make sense. When I said that a gender is the cultural expression of biological sex, where does soul enter that conversation? That doesn't make sense at all. That's like asking what is the Skittles flavor of a chicken nugget. Like what? That doesn't make sense. He said, "You're not just body, are you?" Again, has nothing to do with gender, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. When it says, "I believe the soul is the consciousness that has no body, therefore they have no gender." That's a religious this top discussion. That is not the focus of this. I'm not going to go straight into religious because if I start talking about that, it's going to take us on a whole tangent away from our original topic. I'm not doing it. Got to stay focused. Jesus image says, I would like you to collaborate with you in my church foundation caring for orphans and homeless people in Uganda. Bro, I'm not into um, getting into church foundations. I appreciate your work working with orphan stuff. I might know some people you can reach out to, but I don't get involved in stuff like that myself. Energy 12 says in nature, bisexuality is almost common. Most males prefer females, but when females aren't an option, the more feminine males will offer themselves. Uh, just because bisexuality happens in in nature doesn't mean that it's common. The something that happens, something that occurs, and something that commonly occurs is two different things, right? Like plane crashes happen, but they're not common, right? Thank goodness. It's like yes, there are plane crashes, but they're not common. Actually, planes are the safest mode of travel, like Superman always says. And he's right. He was like, actually, planes are the safest mode of travel. And, Superman is right because he is Superman. But yes, plane crashes happen, but they're not. But just because they happen don't mean they're common. Same thing with bisexuality. Bisexuality happens in the animal kingdom, but it doesn't mean it's common. Jesus says implying. Nicholas says I'm just barely passing bio. If you're just barely passing, I think you need to study more, don't you? Might read up on what's called the PQRST method, or it's also called the SQ3R method. PQRST, preview, question, read, study, test. PQRST method, also called the SQ3R method. Same thing. That makes sense. Don said you slow. Okay. Cat says be respectful with each other, please. Chat room. I agree with Cat. Nicholas says I'm a Christian. I don't have a problem with gay people, and I find this interesting. May God bless you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Whether people have spirits or not, Demic, that's completely irrelevant to the topic. That people having souls has nothing to do with gender. I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with this topic. Um, do, 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 do. Why did I pin that? I didn't mean to pin that. I meant to just hide this user. Okay. Jesus has facts. He said the guy with the highest IQ is a bouncer. Hmm? I don't get that, but okay. Damn, Santa is cool. Sorry, I can't convince you. It's not about convincing me. It's the fact that it has nothing to do with my topic. I don't think you understand that when I say I'm going to do a topic, I'm going to stay on that topic. I'm not going to diverge into something just because you're interested in it. That's not how topics work. If we're having a topic about algebra, um, we're not going to talk about Coca Cola. That has nothing to do with the topic. So, a second here. Jacksonville said, "Did you solve the gender identity crisis?" I don't know what that means. Cat says, "Like, share, subscribe, or drop a super chat." So anyway, before I don't get into it, because it's almost 2 hours in and it's late, people want to talk about nonsense. So all that was to say, let's get into the trans activism. The trans activism's one of the biggest things that left me, that pushed me out of the progressive wing of politics, because they used authoritarian tactics to try to convince people of their views, and that doesn't work, especially with people who aren't weak-minded. Um, so, like, again, transgender people want people to think that just that someone merely thinking they're believing that they're a woman makes them a woman, or vice versa, because they believe they're a man, they are a man. And this is why the evolutionary biologist Jerry Coyne left the Freedom from Religion Foundation recently, because he recently penned an article in that group stating how, biological sex works as a as a as a counter to a previous article that was made in the Freedom from Religion Foundation, in which a person of, I believe, transgender or non-binary identity claimed that a woman is anyone who feels that they are a woman. He's like, that's not how that's not how a woman works. And they originally published his article, and then they retracted his article and gave an apology for it. And what was worse about that was that they didn't give him a heads up saying, "Hey, we're going to retract your article because we find it, maybe too spicy for our publication or whatever." Like they didn't give him any respect. He's a first of all, he's a world-renowned evolutionary biologist, and two, he sits as one of your um one of the um heads of your organization. And so he was like, so he was insulted. Like, first, he's like, first, you retract my article without giving me a heads up. Two, you pull an article where I merely state scientific biology. So you want to let ideology trump gender ideology trump good science. I'm gone. He said, I still agree with, freedom from religion. I just don't agree with your organization anymore. He left. When Richard Dawkins found out about it, he did the same thing. He said, for your mistreatment of Jerry Coyne and the fact that you guys don't respect um, biological science when it comes to gender ideology, I'm leaving too. And then the world-renowned psychologist Steven Pinker left as well. So, and this gets into transgenderism. Cosplaying as a man or a woman does not make you a man or a woman. For all the reasons we specified before about biological sex and gender identity and sexual orientation. A lot of people are being told they're trans just because they're uh, homosexual and don't know how to express those feelings in the context of just being a homosexual male or a homosexual female. And, you know, um, trans females are still biological males. Trans males are still biological females. They can alter their genitalia and take hormone supplements and try to look the gender norm of the opposite gender or sex, but that doesn't change whom they actually are, even if they choose to identify as the opposite sex. It doesn't work. So this is why some of them try to do gender reaffirming treatments to make them look more like the other sex, but it's still cosplay because that's not what defines a different sex. Is by being a female doesn't mean just wearing makeup, wearing long hair, speaking in a soft voice, and having boobs, and maybe cleaving off your penis and then pushing it inside your body to be an ersatz vagina. Like, sorry, that doesn't. That's now. If you want us to consider you a female or a male, then out of courtesy, cool. But you can't demand by law that someone do so. At least not in this country. In the UK, yes, but here, unfortunately, no. Stevie says, was just trying to get a feeling for your leanings, but I love it that you're intelligent and interesting. I subscribe. Well, here's the thing, Skibbity. Like, no, like I wasn't trying to be insulting to you, but truth doesn't have an ideology. Reason doesn't have an ideology. Um, Whenever my political beliefs run afoul of science, so much the so much the worse for those political beliefs because I'm always going to let the light of evidence be what guides my beliefs. Or as the famous quote, I believe, by Aristotle. Um, I think it's Aristotle, could be Plato, but um, it's basically said, um, let your arguments guide you wherever they may. So um, I, insofar as I'm a classical liberal, I think that aligns more closely with a scientific mindset. But if I have any social or political belief that runs afoul of scientific evidence, so much the worse for those beliefs. So I'm always going to follow the evidence or follow the argument wherever it may go. So people who are Democrats can be unscientific. People who are Republicans can be unscientific, and they tend to be anti-science on different matters that affect their ideology. So, anywho, I'm about to go because well, let's see. Let me get through these comments. Then I'll let this go. Buena says I would argue that homosexuality in animals isn't the same thing. It cannot be pointed to as a comparison. Showing dominance isn't the same thing. You again, you keep missing things that I'm telling you, bro. When I said showing dominance, I was saying that that was the ethologist writing that as a euphemism for homosexual sex amongst animals because they couldn't just write that out in a scientific research report that this this animal this male animal just humped this other male animal. They couldn't express it that way. They had to be more euphemistic in how they wrote things in a scientific research report in the early 1900s. So they would say something like the the alpha wolf expresses dominance over the beta wolf. That was a euphemism amongst people in that scientific community. They said that those animals were having homosexual sex. You completely missed that point, even though I said it twice. So yes, there is homosexual behavior in other animals. I think that's obvious to anyone who's ever owned a fucking pet. I, no, I can't pin my topic. This is a vertical live stream. This when you click on it, you see the title. It's not. This is a vertical live stream. I don't have the tools to pin a topic up top. Jay Roberts says, "Keep your beard on, fellas, a badge of manly dignity." I don't agree, actually. So I have nothing against people wearing beards or not wearing beards. What I will say is the funny, the irony is that people think beards are more manly when it takes so much upkeep. The amount the stuff I see dudes doing to groom their beards is like women taking care of their hair. It's actually more manly just to shave this off. So that because you just wake up and you don't have to do anything to your face. But having to get up and put oil in your beard and comb it out, that's pretty salt. I don't know. That's not manly to me. You got to do all that stuff to your beard every day. But again, it's just a matter of preference. If some I'm I like the old I like clean cut military style. So you'll never see me go beyond this little 5 o'clock shadow. I don't do the beards thing. It takes too much upkeep to like you got to keep it trim so it doesn't look sloppy. You got to keep it oiled so it doesn't look all jacked up. You got to comb it out so you're not looking like like someone who just woke up out of a straight jacket. Like it's that's beards are a lot of upkeep. So salute to anyone who has the patience to do that. But I don't have a lot of patience with hair. This is why I typically keep my hair short. Like I'm due for a haircut now, and I typically keep this cut off like this because it's easier. This is why in the military they typically cut all your hair off and make you shave because it's easier. Like when you're in the field, you don't have time to be worrying about waves in your head, looking like Norman Osborn with the fine, finely groomed beard that could rival um, Hussein. Hussein, like, because he had that joint coiffed. You know what I'm saying? Not that I support him, but Hussein had that bad boy coiffed, right? But anyway, I'm off topic. I'm about to get off though. Crimson says great stream, thank you. Skibby says, "Why does it bother people if someone wants to be trans?" Um, it doesn't bother me, but for some, the reason it bothers some people is one is that for religious reasons. Two is just out of a matter of personal distaste. Three is because sometimes they don't know how to regard people who are trans because I have a friend now who, for instance, I have a friend who is now a trans female. So I don't talk to the person as much anymore. We're still cool, but we're not going to hang out or anything. um, because I mean, if I hang out with the person, I don't want them to think I'm with that person. Sorry. Apparently, perceptions matter, especially as I have a wife. I'm not, no. Mm-mm. So, so that's the other thing that can bother people about someone being trans is that they don't know how to behave around someone who is that way. And then the fourth reason might be that they think that this person is mentally ill. So you, those are four motives for why people might be bothered about someone who's trans. Aside from that, I don't have a problem with them myself. My problem is with them trying to change like the laws of society to to benefit them solely, um, even though they are just a very small minority of the of the population. They want all of society to be bent around their viewpoints. And the other problem with that is that they have gender dysphoria. Like they are suffering gender dysphoria, and they want people to see that. They want to normalize people who are suffering from gender dysphoria, and that is a problem. Gender dysphoria is a mental illness, and we shouldn't normalize something like something that is psychologically unhealthy just because it makes people feel better. Ronaldo Gomez is it comes it mostly comes down to chromosomes and gametes. A trans woman will still have male gametes and chromosomes, all that work, and you still can't fight nature. Yeah, I mean, so this is something I've been talking about ad nauseum throughout most of the stream about what defines biological sex, which is it's not even just chromosomes. It's purely like biological sex is simple in scientific biology. It is the size of the gametes. Large gametes is a female, small gametes is a male. Boom, done. This has been known for 100 years in scientific biology. Patty says, "Hello, sir. It's me, Gupta from India. Don't recall you, but hello." Furnace says, "I got what you were saying about the wolf, but I took it to mean that the point of the wolf doing it was indeed to impose their dominance." No, I was saying that was just a euphemism by the ethologists of the time in talking about homosexual behavior in animals because they couldn't say it outrightly in their scientific research reports. Euphemism. Like when they say expressing their dominance, it's just to say, like, in the military, collateral damage, euphemism. So, same thing. Aubrey says hi. What's up, Aubrey? Chris Guzman says hello. Jacksonville says questions about transition is the ones who are really upset are the male to females who expeditiously want to get into a female's bathroom, not hearing much from the female to male side. Um, I don't know. That's a different topic. What I was, what I would say is we see where the trans activists lost their argument has been in competitive sports. This is when people, even people who want to be accepting of their of gender ideology, this is when the rubber meets the road, so to speak. Like when it's just in the abstract, when we're just talking about, well, yeah, a male can be a female, blah 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 blah. It sound sometimes it sounds good on paper, But when you actually see a biological man beating the shit out of a woman, then it becomes different, doesn't it? Not just competitive sports, but of all competitive sports, combat sports. Imani, in one of the matches with Imani Khalif and an actual woman, he hit that woman so hard it nearly broke her face. And I'm not exaggerating. People, I'm pretty sure you guys remember that who watched the Olympics. He hit that woman so hard that it nearly broke her face. She cried and gave up the match. Stuff like this has a way of not allowing people to keep suspending belief anymore. You can suspend belief only to a certain point. When you see a biological man beating up a biological woman just because they feel they are a fucking woman, nah. Forget the whole bathroom thing. That could be something. I mean, I when I went to my alma mater last year, I went into one of those non-binary bathrooms. There was nothing wrong with it, uh, except for the fact they had tampons at the at the sink. And so I actually asked my wife. I said, I was like, baby, do women's bathrooms have tampons at the sink? She was like, no. I was like, oh, okay. I said, so I went to a, I told her I went to my, I visited my old school for they had their own annual celebration every year, Maryland Day, and so they are ranked as like number one or number two in like gender diversity and all that bullshit. And I went to one of the non-binary bathrooms because I had to go, and like we couldn't find any other bathrooms where we were, so I was like, fuck it. Went there, it was clean, it was nice, and the Johns were in individual stalls. So whatever, so the people don't have to actually reveal whether they have a Johnson or not, right? So I didn't have a problem with that because actually if anything, I prefer stalls between the Johns. That way, I don't have to have a dude come up and pee next to me. Like ladies, ask a dude. Every guy has some story about a guy that stand beside him when he was peeing, when there was another John one one away that he could have went to instead. That's happened to like I think that's happened to every dude at one point, and it's uncomfortable as fuck. So the non so the non-binary bathrooms where they put individual stalls up, I mean individual um partitions up for between the Johns. I'm cool with that. The only thing, like I said, the only thing weird about it was the tampons at the sink, but I didn't care. At least knowing when I walked in was queer non-binary as far as I could tell. So um, so anyway, I'm about to go because we getting too many weird comments. Stovetop says no such thing as trans. Okay. Cat says 100. Jacksonville says these corporations that validate this behavior make people think that they care and look at these big corporations support U.S. colleges support us, but they don't want the lawsuits. I'm trying to follow you, but you're kind of all over the place with that one. Someone says our society is desensitized. We are watching men box women, and it's becoming normal now. A lot, no, to some of us, a lot of us cringe seeing that dude. It was not because it was two intersex boxers, both of them who were banned by the boxing federations, even though the Olympics allowed the International Olympic Committee allowed them to compete. The boxing federation had outlawed both of these people because they had their testosterone levels were too high to compete with biological females, even though they identified as women. And on top of that, both of them, even though they had developmental sexual disorders, were genetically male. On top of that, it came out later after the Olympics that not only was Amani Khalif a genetic male, that his intersex wasn't legit. Which I could have told you that the dude looked like fucking Xerxes from 300. Like I thought he came down. I thought he came down from the heavens to fight King Leonidas. I'm sorry, that motherfucker looked like fucking Xerxes. Chat room, tell me that Amani Khalif, the Olympic boxer, didn't look like Xerxes. That motherfucker looked like Xerxes. All he had to do was shave the hair off. That would have been Xerxes like a motherfucker. Like he looked like he came to do war with Xerxes and the 300 Spartans. He said the reporters walked out in protest for calling them men. Well, I, so I would have just been careful. I would have just said these are genetic males. Can't say biological male, even though you can say that too. But I would still say genetic male. You can't say you could argue they're not biological males because they had developmental sexual disorders, which made them so-called intersex. But they were still genetic males, XY. But they had developmental sexual disorders, so that their genitalia and secondary sexual features uh, were female and male. So presumably Amani had a vagina, even though he was genetically a male. And I'm going to call him he because if you're genetically a male, you're a male. But wanted to be identified as a woman because apparently with the developmental sexual disorder, his some of his genitalia was presumably female. But that has come into contention. And then there was the Taiwanese boxer who was also a genetic male who presented as a woman. So, dude walks like a lady. Oh yeah, Tyrone says more like varicose and living color. I'm a lady. Yeah, I remember. People don't. Yeah, old school Tyrone. People don't remember Varicosa from In Living Color. They don't remember that one. I remember. As long as when people talk about Roman type names, I feel like finishing Reese. I don't know what that is. Sorry. Screwed up essay says looking like a straight killer because of my glasses. What are you talking about? Amani Khalif. I don't know. You talking about me or you talking about Amani Khalif? He said the Olympics should be ashamed of themselves. They should be ashamed of themselves for a lot of reasons, bro. Between letting themselves letting Olympics happen in a certain country a couple of times. I can't mention that country, but we know who they are. They have a certain Pooh Bear, but I can't go into that because if I say the actual name, I'll get dinged and I won't get monetized. They shouldn't have been allowed to have the Olympics there. Um, they shouldn't be allowing people who are using performance enhancing substances to compete against other athletes. There's so much wrong with the IOC. I don't know where to start. But this is one of the reasons I don't even take the Olympics seriously anymore. I said I don't care if they have a micro penis, they're still a dude. Exactly. But supposedly, Imani Khalif, like I said, this is where the contention comes. Supposedly, he has the vag, like he has developmental sexual disorder where he's genetically male, um, but his his genitalia is female. But there's been some contention on that after the Olympics. Nukaka says hello from Greenland. What's up, Nukaka? I've never had any viewer from Greenland before. How are you today? Buena says I didn't even watch the Olympics this time around. I saw the trans stuff at the beginning and checked out. Oh, I'm with you, bro. I only watched the snippets on the news. I did not. The only thing I looked to was the gymnastics. I think the gymnastics, and that's about it. I used to love the Olympics back like when I was a kid though. I used to follow that stuff. I used to love seeing them like be on like Wheaties cereal, like that famous gymnast. What was her name? I can't remember. She was such a sweetheart. Now that I look at her as an adult, I'm like, whoa, she was pretty. I can't remember, but I was as a kid. I just saw her as an adult. I can't remember her name. Um, then I used to have a crush on Dominique Dawes. She went to my college, and I never tried to ask her out, even though I wanted to. But she was mad cool. Dominique Dawes was cute, but she went to my school, and the silver medal winner for the male gymnastics also went to my school too. So that's what's up, right? But yeah, I always loved gymnastics. Bruce Jenner. No, 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 not Bruce Jenner. Unless you saying he has a micro peen. But anyway, guys, it's two with 2.5 hours, and I'm about to go. If anyone hasn't subbed, please sub. Give me a like. It means a lot. Even even if people can't, support me financially, just a like and a sub does a lot. Like subbing and sharing these videos with other people, that can go far because it helps me with the algorithm, so I can get paid, so I can buy me some more fruit snacks and get the wifey some stuff. I just bought her a tactical flashlight. So um, yeah, so guys, please help me support me by subbing and liking and sharing. Liking, just hitting the thumbs up when it's just the little button with the thumbs up emoji. That's liking a video. Oh, Bruce Jenner was on some Wheaties. I didn't know he was, but I'm not talking about her. I mean him, whatever. I'm talking about the and was he ever? I don't think Bruce was ever in the Olympics, was he? Or what's his name now? Caitlyn Jenner, or whatever. Anyway, um, no, I'm talking about the adorable gymnast back in the '80s. She was like the first athlete I remember being on the Wheaties box before it became Jordan. Once Michael Jordan came on, I swear every all of us in like elementary school and middle school, we was eating Wheaties, and Wheaties taste. I'm sorry, let's be honest. Wheaties taste like shit. Wheaties is a nasty tasting cereal. But just the fact that it was Michael Jordan and I was living in Chicago at the time, all of us ate Wheaties. Like I won't say we ate it every day, but all of us ate Wheaties just because Michael Jordan was on it. Because we're like little, we're kids in elementary school. All of us had the 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 wall poster that was his exact height, at 6 foot 6, hanging on our walls. Um, ate our Wheaties, but like before him, it was it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm gonna get off the live stream and I'm gonna look up her name and be like, oh yeah, that's her name. But she was a little white chick, very short. Mary was it Mary Lou Carrette? What's her name? Mary Lou something. Something. I can't remember her name. Mary Lou Carrette Car something. But this is the early '80s. Then I remember people like Greg Louganis, who was a who was the man when it came to swimming back in the day. Greg Louganis and Mary Lou Retton or whatever her name is. Vanessa, Ev, I can't remember. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. It says, Heavenly Father, I pray for this man, protect him. Watch over him in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. Appreciate that. Catherine says, yes, he was. Oh, yeah, I didn't know he was on the Wheaties box. I didn't check for him. The only, like I said, it was Mary Lou Retton or whatever her name was, and Michael Jordan. Those were the two people I remember off the Wheaties box back in the 80s. Those only two I cared about. Lou Renner, is that what's her name? Mary Mary Lou Renner. Buenos has found it. Good night. I'll catch you on some other time. Thank you. I'm gonna try to do this earlier. Mary Lou Renner. Thank you guys. Karen says he was in the Olympics. Oh, like again, I literally didn't know anything about Bruce Jenner until his transition. Um, my problem with transitioning again is I don't have a problem if an adult does it, but when they're pushing this on minors, that's my problem. Like you're feeding into a delusion caused by gender dysphoria, and again, it goes into the problem with talking about social constructs as if they're relative. First of all, I like I want to get back to these people who do gender and queer studies, is that calling something a social construct doesn't make it relative. That's number one. Two is if something is relative, then there's no argument about it. Three is if something is relative, then you can't then how can you change the objective status of something that is relative through gender reaffirming treatment? That doesn't make sense. Like I said, personal taste is relative. There's no there's no chocolate reaffirming treatments to say to make sure that a person decides that chocolate is the best flavor. So it's just it's just so many things wrong with it. So burn, I don't need your money. Keep your $50 and go purchase an IQ with it. Like no, if you think I'm one of those people that does drugs that will do something for a random viewer, you need to kick rocks and get the fuck off my fucking channel. Don't ever the fucking come back, you stupid piece of shit. Get the fuck off my channel before I ban you. I don't know why I think someone think I will not perform for anyone. Besides, why pay him $50 when I just paid his mother $50 to suck my dick and jiggle him for the past 5 days? $10 per day was a pretty good deal. She takes the weekends off. She got let that thing breathe during the weekend. But from 5 days for the $50, he just trying to recoup that loss. That's why his name is Soul Burn. Anyway, guys, that's my cue to get off. Double A says, "Hey, bro, thank you for your voice and support for the LGBTQ community. I didn't voice any support, but I'm not against them either. What I will say is, I I've mentioned this before, but I think the LGBTQ community needs to look more into Freud because they would have found I'm sure some of them have, but if but for many of them who don't know much about psychology, you would have found that Freud was an early supporter of many of the tenets of the LGBT, many things the LGBTQ claims nowadays. In an era, in the Victorian era, where these claims wouldn't have been very good. Like even his later psychoanalysts disagreed with him on some of these things. Like he said that homosexuality is not, it's not a matter of psychopathology. He said that uh, he agreed that gender norms were fluid back in the day. Um, he saw that a lot of, he agreed that a lot of these things were biological at their root, because a lot of people think that he blamed everything on childhood upbringing, which yes he did a lot in his psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic theory, but his background was as a, as was a medically trained neurologist. So he's, he had a huge appreciation that most of behavior was based in biology, which gets us into the second scientific law that I want to bring up today. The first one was that the law of behavioral genetics, which is that all human traits are partly hereditary. Then there's a more basic law in neuroscience, which is that all human behavior is a reflection of the activity of the brain. So that's where I'm going to leave you guys with that. Um, and tomorrow we're going to get into another correctly, politically incorrect topic. Shout out to Moonlit Fern for giving me that title. Thanks, Kat, for telling me about that. Have a good night as well. I'm gone, guys. It's late. Thank you for whoever left me the super chat. I don't know what happened to that person, so I couldn't address them directly. But in any case, appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Good night to those on this side of the ocean. Have a good day to the rest of you on the other side of the ocean. Take care.